Dr. Reyes stared at her computer screen, the strange signal patterns pulsing with unmistakable artificial regularity. 3 weeks of sleepless nights had yielded results that both thrilled and terrified her. She took a deep breath and dialed a number she promised herself she would only use in extraordinary circumstances. "General Hammond, I need to meet with you immediately," she said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "It's about that theoretical scenario we discussed last year at the conference." 12 hours later, Dr. Reyes stood before a hastily assembled group in a secure underground facility beneath the Pentagon. 5 pairs of eyes watched her with expressions ranging from skepticism to alarm as she presented her findings. "The signals originate from approximately 0.8 astronomical units beyond Neptune's orbit," she explained, pointing to the holographic display. "They exhibit patterns consistent with data encryption algorithms, but with a complexity suggesting capabilities far beyond our current technology." General Hammond leaned forward, his weathered face grave. "You're certain these aren't Russian or Chinese communications? Perhaps a classified satellite project?" Dr. Reyes shook her head. "The signal strength alone would require power sources we can't currently produce in space, and the transmission frequencies interact with solar radiation in ways our engineering hasn't achieved." Dr. Pittel, the quantum physicist, adjusted his glasses nervously. "If what you're suggesting is true, why haven't they made direct contact?" "They're studying us," replied Dr. Reyes simply, "like anthropologists observing an isolated tribe before deciding whether to make contact." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity was the isolated tribe, and something far more advanced was watching from just beyond the edge of their solar system. Admiral Wilson broke the silence. "Assuming you're right, how long do we have before they make their presence known?" Dr. Reyes projected a new set of data onto the display. "Based on communication frequency increases, I estimate between 3 to 6 months. They appear to be accelerating their observation schedule." "And what do they want?" asked the CIA director, her voice carefully neutral. "That's what we need to find out," said Dr. Reyes. "I've made some progress deciphering their language structure. With the right team, we might be able to understand more before they arrive." General Hammond nodded decisively. "You'll have whatever resources you need. This stays completely classified. Operation designation: Silent Sentinel." As the meeting adjourned, Dr. Reyes found herself alone with General Hammond in the corridor. "Eliana," he said quietly, using her first name for the first time in their professional relationship, "your file says you specialized in extinct human languages before switching to theoretical xenolinguistics. Everyone thought you were throwing away a promising career. What made you make that change?" Dr. Reyes smiled faintly. "I realized that the greatest challenge in translation isn't dealing with different words, General. It's understanding fundamentally different ways of thinking." She paused, looking at the classified files in her hands. "And I've always believed we weren't alone. I just didn't expect to be proven right this soon." Above them, beyond the blue sky and the cold vacuum of space, Captain Vrex was completing his latest report to the Dominion Council. The humans were primitive, but advancing unusually quickly. Their fractious nature and constant conflicts made them unpredictable, but ultimately manageable. He recommended accelerated contact protocols. The Empire had no idea what awaited them. Admiral Zex Tarian stood before the Dominion Council's immense circular chamber, his ceremonial armor gleaming under the light of 7 artificial suns representing the founding worlds. The councillors, each from a different species, watched from elevated platforms that emphasized their status over the military officer. The humans' technological development, is accelerating beyond projected models, Zextarian reported, manipulating the holographic display to show Earth's rapid industrialization and digital revolution. They achieved in 2 centuries what took most species a millennium. High Counselor Vex, the oldest living Arthurian, leaned forward on his graph throne. Yet they still fight among themselves over resources and ideology, curious for a species so intellectually capable. Precisely why this is the optimal time for integration, Zextarian replied. They possess valuable traits, but lack the unity to resist our standard protocols. The psychological impact of our arrival will fragment their already divided leadership. The Council voted unanimously for accelerated contact. None questioned the assessment. In 7,000 years, the procedure had never failed. Meanwhile, in a converted missile silo beneath the Colorado mountains, Dr. Rias's team had expanded to include specialists from 17 countries. The international cooperation, unprecedented in its secrecy and scope, had yielded remarkable progress. We've identified patterns consistent with military commands in their transmissions, reported Commander Yoshida, formerly of Japanese naval intelligence. She highlighted segments of decoded alien communications on the central display. They're positioning for a show of force, not an attack. Dr. Rias nodded. Classic intimidation strategy. Their cultural references suggest they value displays of superiority before negotiation. General Chen studied the projected approach vectors of the alien fleet. How certain are we of their technological capabilities? Dr. Marcus, the quantum physicist recruited from MIT, pulled up simulations based on observed energy signatures. Their propulsion and weapon systems operate on principles we theoretically understand, but haven't mastered. However, he added with unexpected excitement, their computer architecture shows signs of evolutionary development rather than revolutionary breakthroughs. Meaning? Asked General Hammond. Meaning they've refined the same technologies for thousands of years rather than exploring fundamentally different approaches, Dr. Marcus explained. Efficient, but potentially vulnerable to methods they'd consider obsolete or never discovered. Lieutenant Colonel Garcia, head of cybersecurity, leaned forward. Like how modern encryption can sometimes be defeated by techniques abandoned decades ago, because nobody defends against them anymore. Dr. Marcus grinned. Exactly. The meeting was interrupted by urgent alerts. Massive objects had appeared in orbit around Earth, 5 Dominion vessels positioned above major cities, their design matching exactly what Dr. Rias's team had predicted from intercepted blueprints. In New York, Tokyo, Moscow, Beijing, and London, millions looked up at enormous ships that appeared from nowhere, their sleek hulls defying human engineering possibilities. Global communications exploded with panic, religious proclamations, and conspiracy theories. But in 17 key military installations around the world, carefully selected personnel implemented pre-arranged protocols with remarkable calm. When the Dominion's transmission reached Earth's communication networks, expecting to find governments in chaos, they instead received a single unified response. On the bridge of his flagship, Admiral Zextarian watched the human woman appear on his view screen, her composure inexplicable given the circumstances. On behalf of Earth, I am Dr. Eliana Reyes, she said in perfect galactic standard, a language humans shouldn't have even known existed. We welcome peaceful dialogue with the Dominion and request formal diplomatic consultation. For the first time in his distinguished career, Admiral Zextarian found himself speechless. The Geneva Conference Hall had been transformed overnight. Specialized atmospheric regulators hummed quietly, adjusting oxygen levels and temperature gradients to accommodate 7 different species' biological needs. Security teams from a dozen nations maintained a discreet perimeter, while global media networks were kept at bay, fed only carefully selected footage. Admiral Zextarian's delegation sat across from humanity's representatives, the contrast between them stark. The Dominion officials wore ceremonial armor and emblems of conquest from 1,000 campaigns, while Earth's team dressed in simple diplomatic attire. Only Dr. Rias's translator pin, reverse-engineered from intercepted Dominion communications, hinted at humanity's remarkable preparation. "Your species has potential," Zextarian conceded after outlining the Dominion's terms. "We offer the same opportunity extended to all developing civilizations: protection, technological advancement, and a place within our hierarchy." Dr. Rias nodded respectfully while noting the subtle gill flutter of the vexillary diplomat, a sign of deception her team had identified from behavioral studies. And the resource quotas, 30% seems substantial. "A fair exchange for lifting your species centuries beyond your natural development path," replied Zextarian. "Consider your internal conflicts alone. We bring unity where you have only achieved division." In the observation room behind mirrored glass, General Chen whispered to Hammond, "He believes what he's saying. Their historical records must show this approach has worked before." Hammond nodded grimly. "Cultivate gratitude through intimidation, then harvest resources from willing subjects. Classic colonization playbook." On the conference floor, Dr. Rias maintained perfect diplomatic poise. "The United Earth Council appreciates the Dominion's generous offer. We request 72 hours to consult with our global leadership." Admiral Zextarian's upper mandibles twitched in satisfaction, precisely the response his cultural specialists had predicted. Of course, deliberation is expected from species at your development stage. We will await your acceptance. As the Dominion delegation departed, Dr. Rias joined the military leaders in the secure room below the conference hall. "They bought it," she said, slipping into a chair. The Admiral's secondary breathing patterns showed complete confidence. "They have no idea we've been intercepting their communications for months." General Hammond activated the secure display showing global preparation efforts. Operation Shattered Mirror enters Phase 2. All participating nations have confirmed deployment readiness. Dr. Marcus brought up technical schematics. The quantum reflection arrays are in position. If they follow standard Dominion protocols, they'll demonstrate weapons capabilities on an uninhabited target before accepting our submission. "And we'll be ready," said Commander Yoshida, studying satellite imagery of newly positioned defensive systems. "Though I still don't understand why they can't detect our countermeasures." Dr. Rias smiled faintly. "Because they're looking for wrong things. Their tactical analysis assumes certain technological approaches based on our development path. They're scanning for energy signatures matching their weapons, not the passive systems we've deployed." Carol Garza noted, "Like looking for advanced firewalls while we're using paper messages and carrier pigeons." "Precisely," Dr. Rees replied. "Their strength is their weakness. 7,000 years of unchallenged dominance has made them predictable." On screens around the room, live feeds showed military and scientific teams worldwide implementing protocols developed in the most remarkable cooperative effort in human history. Aircraft carriers changed position under electronic blackouts. Satellite trajectories adjusted by increments too small to trigger Dominion alerts. Civilian communication networks carried subtly coded messages coordinating global evacuation protocols disguised as routine emergency drills. Humanity had 72 hours to prepare its response, and not a single minute would be wasted. Admiral Zex Tarian arrived at the reconvened Geneva conference with his most decorated officers. Their ceremonial armor, adorned with markers of conquered worlds, created a deliberate contrast to the simple attire of Earth's delegation. The Admiral's aide carried a data crystal containing standard integration protocols, the same document signed by hundreds of species before. "Your deliberation period has concluded," Zex Tarian announced. "The Dominion welcomes your acceptance of our generous terms." Dr. Rhea stood, her expression betraying nothing of humanity's frantic preparations over the past 72 hours. "Admiral, the United Earth Council extends its appreciation for the Dominion's offer. We propose an alternative arrangement." The translator rendered her words in Galactic standard, and the Dominion delegation exchanged glances of confusion. This deviation from predicted behavior was unprecedented. "Alternative arrangements are not customary," replied Zex Tarian stiffly. "Perhaps our terms were unclear." Dr. Reyes activated a holographic display showing a balanced trade proposal: limited technological exchange, recognition of Earth's sovereignty, and modest resource sharing. "We believe this approach better serves both our civilizations' interests." The Admiral's secondary breathing slits flared, a sign of rising anger that Dr. Reyes had studied extensively. "Your species misunderstands its position. Perhaps a demonstration will provide clarity." He tapped a command sequence on his wrist terminal. On the massive view screen behind him, his flagship moved into position above an uninhabited island in the Pacific Ocean. "Observe the consequences of pride," Zex Tarian announced, his voice carrying the weight of 7,000 years of uncontested power. In the secure control center beneath the Geneva facility, Carol Garcia monitored the deployment of Project Helios, the quantum reflection array positioned during the 72-hour window. Energy buildup detected in the flagship's main cannon, exactly as predicted. General Chen nodded grimly. "Activate the reflectors on my mark." The Dominion weapon discharged, creating a searing beam of blue-white energy that sliced through Earth's atmosphere toward the empty island. For a microsecond, the beam appeared to strike its target, then abruptly changed direction, redirected by satellites coated with a metamaterial developed through quantum computing simulations run on systems the Dominion considered primitive. The redirected energy struck the engines of a Dominion support vessel with surgical precision. The ship's shields, calibrated to defend against attacks from enemy vessels, failed completely against their own weapon's energy signature. The vessel disappeared in a cascade of disintegrating matter. In the conference room, Admiral Zex Tarian watched in stunned silence as real-time telemetry confirmed the impossible. A primary support cruiser, gone, not through attack, but through their own weapons' energy. Dr. Reyes and the human delegation maintained perfect composure, as though the destruction of a starship was a minor diplomatic incident. "Admiral," Dr. Reyes said into the shocked silence, "we hope this demonstration clarifies our position. The United Earth Council has no desire for conflict, but we are prepared to defend our sovereignty." Zex Tarian's mandibles clicked rapidly, a biological response to extreme stress that his species had evolved over millions of years. "How?" he demanded. "Your technology is centuries behind ours." Dr. Reyes smiled slightly. "The Dominion evaluates species based on their offensive capabilities. Humanity has always excelled at defense, particularly when we redirect our adversaries' strengths against them." The Admiral's eyes narrowed as he reassessed the primitives before him. In 7,000 years of expansion, the Dominion had conquered hundreds of worlds through superior firepower. They had never encountered a species that turned their own power against them. "The Dominion Council will hear of this," he said finally. "We're counting on it," replied Dr. Reyes. The Dominion Armada emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation, 50 warships arranged in the spear of conquest pattern that had broken the will of countless civilizations. Admiral Zextarian stood on his flagship's command deck, his posture rigid with wounded pride and determination. "Begin the standard targeting sequence," he ordered. "Military installations first, then governmental centers." His tactical officer hesitated. "Admiral, our scans show most of their military bases appear empty." Zextarian's mandibles clicked in irritation. Impossible. Their evacuation capabilities couldn't have moved significant forces in the time allowed. Nevertheless, the initial strikes hit facilities already abandoned, weapons expending themselves on empty bunkers and vacant airfields. When they targeted active installations, unexpected defensive measures activated, not the energy shields the Dominion might have anticipated, but ingenious passive systems that absorbed, redirected, or simply failed to register the attacks. Deep beneath the Atlantic Ocean, in a converted research submarine that had been recommissioned for Operation Shattered Mirror, Sasha Volkov hunched over a gleaming array of computers. The former cybercriminal now led Earth's most elite digital warfare team. Their scanning on standard Dominion frequencies, he reported to Dr. Reyes through a quantum-encrypted channel, just as you predicted. Dr. Reyes nodded, watching data stream across multiple displays in the Antarctic Command Center. "Have they detected your infiltration?" Sasha allowed himself a rare smile. "Their security algorithms are looking for sophisticated modern attacks. We're using techniques they consider too primitive to be threatening, like trying to stop a bank heist while someone picks the back door lock with a paperclip." His team had achieved the impossible, accessing Dominion systems using methods so outdated they bypassed advanced security designed to counter cutting-edge intrusions, rather than attempting to disable the alien ships, which would trigger automated countermeasures. They introduced subtle errors throughout the fleet's interconnected systems. Targeting coordinates shifted by fractions of degrees. Sensor readings displayed phantom threats. Communication between ships experienced inexplicable delays. Each malfunction was small enough to be attributed to equipment failure rather than attack, creating confusion rather than alerting the Dominion to the true nature of humanity's defense. When Dominion ground forces deployed to secure key locations in North America, Europe, and Asia, they encountered neither the expected military resistance nor the anticipated civilian panic. Instead, they found environments that seemed to fight back through 1,000 small, unpredictable ways. Automated transportation systems rerouted to isolate alien forces. Civilian communication networks coordinated resistance without centralized command. Urban infrastructure reconfigured in ways the Dominion's tactical simulations couldn't predict. In Washington, D.C., a Dominion commander led his elite squad toward what intelligence identified as a critical command center. They moved with perfect military precision, only to find themselves trapped when seemingly unrelated systems, traffic lights, subway controls, and building security, synchronized to seal them in a commercial district emptied of civilians hours earlier. "This isn't warfare as we understand it," the commander reported to the flagship. "The humans aren't engaging us directly. It's as if the planet itself is fighting us." On the bridge, Admiral Zextarian reviewed the mounting reports of small failures, minor setbacks, and inexplicable difficulties. None constituted a major defeat, yet collectively they had stalled the Dominion's carefully planned offensive across every front. "Where is their central command?" He demanded, "Where are their military leaders? Where is the decisive battle they must eventually offer?" His strategic officer had no answer. The Dominion's military doctrine, refined over thousands of years, had no protocol for an adversary that refused to fight according to recognizable patterns. For the first time in his distinguished career, Admiral Tyranny began to feel something unfamiliar: doubt. The Dominion Council chamber had never hosted an emergency session during an active military campaign. For 7,000 years, such gatherings had been unnecessary. Conflicts typically concluded with swift Dominion victories. Admiral Tyranny stood before the assembled council, his proud posture unable to disguise the unprecedented situation. The holographic battle display behind him showed not the expected progression of conquest, but a confused stalemate across Earth's surface. The humans employ warfare doctrines that defy classification, he reported. They refuse decisive engagements. They concede territory without resistance, then render it unusable through methods we struggle to counter. War Minister Crowthall, the oldest military mind in the Dominion, leaned forward on his ancient carapace. All species fight according to recognizable patterns. Find their central command structure and destroy it. We cannot locate it, admitted Tyranny. Their leadership appears distributed across multiple locations. When we neutralize one node, others seamlessly assume command. High Chancellor Ethrax's voice carried the weight of 7 millennia of civilization. Show us examples of these unusual tactics. The display shifted to show a Dominion force securing what intelligence identified as a critical power facility in the region humans called Eastern Europe. The soldiers moved with precision born of countless successful campaigns. The facility fell within minutes, exactly as simulated. 6 hours later, atmospheric regulators throughout the captured installation failed simultaneously. The Dominion soldiers found themselves exposed to Earth's oxygen-nitrogen mix, breathable, but causing disorientation and reduced combat effectiveness in species evolved for different atmospheric compositions. The facility was a decoy, explains Tyranny, deliberately surrendered to drain our resources. The display shifted again to intercepted human communications. Military and civilian leaders discussed concepts alien to Dominion strategy: asymmetric warfare, insurgency tactics, distributed command networks, and most disturbing, psychological operations. Most concerning, continued the Admiral, is their reaction to setbacks. When we achieve tactical victories, we observe not the expected demoralization, but increased resolve across their population. Their communication networks spread imagery of damaged human infrastructure, which appears to strengthen rather than weaken their determination. In the specialized xenopsychology chamber adjoining the council room, the Dominion's finest minds reviewed their models with growing concern. 7,000 years of conquest had established certain constants in sentient species' responses to overwhelming force. Humanity violated these patterns in ways that rendered traditional conquest strategies ineffective. Their history reveals the answer, stated senior analyst Vinchet, displaying Earth's violent past. Human conflicts have never developed the ritualized patterns common to other species. Their wars evolved in environments where victory often went to those willing to break established norms. The council chamber fell silent as the implications became clear. The Dominion had encountered many martial species before, but always ones that followed predictable rules of engagement. Humans had developed warfare as a pure survival mechanism, unconstrained by the ethical or traditional boundaries that shaped conflict among other civilizations. On Earth, the resistance continued in ways that confounded Dominion tactical doctrine. civilian populations evacuated through protocols developed during natural disasters and war preparations. Military forces refused conventional engagements, instead targeting supply chains, communication networks, and support systems. Infrastructure itself seemed weaponized against the invaders through countless small, coordinated actions. Admiral Tyranny faced the Council with the first recommendation of its kind in Dominion history. "We must consider employing the eternal silence," he said, naming the planet-killer weapon that existed primarily as a deterrent. Conventional military victory against these humans may not be possible through standard protocols. The chamber erupted in shocked debate. Never before had the Dominion faced a species requiring such extreme measures, especially one so technologically inferior. War Minister Kravthal's ancient voice finally cut through the chaos. "If primitives have driven us to contemplate our ultimate weapon, perhaps we must reconsider our assessment of their primitive status." The eternal silence moved into position at the edge of Earth's solar system, its massive silhouette eclipsing distant stars. Unlike the sleek predatory designs of standard Dominion warships, this vessel resembled a metallic planet fragment, its surface riddled with focusing arrays and energy conduits that channeled power no civilization had ever survived witnessing at full capacity. On its command deck, Grand Admiral Thormvax, the Dominion's most decorated military leader, prepared to deploy a weapon used only 3 times in 7,000 years of expansion, and never fired. Its mere existence had ended 3 previous conflicts, the threat alone sufficient to secure immediate surrender. "Begin final targeting sequence," he ordered. "Calculate minimal discharge required for planetary capitulation without rendering the resource deposits unusable." His crew worked with solemn efficiency. Using a weapon that violated the ancient rules of honorable conflict was unprecedented against a pre-FTL civilization, but the Supreme Council's authorization had been unanimous after reviewing Admiral Xterian's reports. Deep beneath the Antarctic ice, in a facility constructed in secret during the months following Dr. Rias' discovery of alien observation, humanity's final defensive measure neared completion. Dr. Hiroshi Takahashi, the quantum physicist whose theories had been dismissed as impossible by his peers, monitored calibrations on equipment that shouldn't have existed for at least another century. "Project Pandora is ready," he confirmed, his calm voice belying the extraordinary nature of the technology surrounding him. Final simulations confirm viability. Dr. Rias studied the data with exhausted eyes. 3 days without sleep had left her running on stimulants and determination. "The targeting is precise. We can't risk collateral damage beyond the solar system. The effect will be contained to the Dominion fleet and hyperspace network," Takahashi assured her. "Though I still don't understand how you predicted the vulnerability in their FTL system." Dr. Reyes allowed herself a small smile. "I didn't, but 7,000 years of technological evolution creates blind spots. Their specialists have refined the same basic principles for millennia, never questioning fundamental assumptions established before their civilization achieved spaceflight. Project Pandora exploited a critical vulnerability in the Dominion's faster-than-light drive systems, a flaw invisible to those who had evolved the technology incrementally, but obvious to human scientists approaching the problem from first principles. If deployed, it would create a cascading failure in the hyperspace network that served as the backbone of Dominion power, potentially stranding thousands of vessels across the galaxy. "Request emergency communication with the Dominion Council," Dr. Reyes instructed. "Priority channel, maximum encryption." When the connection established, she transmitted detailed specifications of Project Pandora directly to the Dominion's Science Directorate with a simple message: "We hope never to use this. The decision is yours." Aboard the Eternal Silence, alarms blared as the transmission arrived. Grand Admiral Thorn Vax watched in growing horror as his science officers verified the human weapon's viability. "Impossible," he whispered. "Their technological development is centuries behind requirements for such calculations." The senior physicist's mandibles trembled as she replied, "Nevertheless, their approach is sound. If deployed, the cascade would not only disable our fleet, but potentially collapse large sections of the hyperspace network throughout Dominion space." For the first time in 7,000 years of uncontested expansion, the Dominion faced a primitive species capable of inflicting catastrophic damage on their civilization. Most disturbing was the implied philosophy behind such a weapon. The humans had developed a defensive capability that ensured mutual destruction rather than surrender. Grand Admiral Thornvax stared at the blue-green planet on his view screen, so seemingly insignificant against the backdrop of space, yet harboring a species willing to risk damaging the very fabric of space-time to ensure their survival. "Hold position," he ordered finally. "Inform the Supreme Council that standard Conquest protocols have failed. Request new instructions." The diplomatic delegation that assembled on Phobos, Mars' largest moon, bore little resemblance to the confident representatives who had first offered Earth protection in exchange for submission. High Chancellor Ethrax himself led the Dominion contingent, the first time in 3,000 years the Supreme Leader had personally attended negotiations with a non-spacefaring species. A hastily constructed dome maintained Earth-like conditions on one side of the chamber and Dominion standard atmosphere on the other, with translation systems far more sophisticated than earlier models facilitating communication. The setting itself reflected the unprecedented nature of these talks. Neither side held the clear advantage that had defined all previous Dominion first contacts. Dr. Reyes led humanity's delegation, her calm demeanor masking exhaustion from months of crisis management. Beside her sat General Chen, whose coordinated defense had frustrated the Dominion's military doctrine at every turn, and Dr. Takahashi, whose theoretical breakthrough had given Earth its final deterrent. "We meet as equals," began High Chancellor Ethrax, the formal greeting itself a stunning departure from Dominion protocol. "A circumstance my civilization has not experienced in 7 millennia." Dr. Reyes nodded respectfully. Equality forms the foundation of any lasting peace. The negotiations that followed revealed the profound cultural divide between humans and the Dominion species. The alien representatives struggled to comprehend a civilization that viewed warfare not as a regulated contest, but as an existential struggle where conventional rules became secondary to survival. "Your historical records show thousands of conflicts," noted the Dominion's chief, Sena Vestorian. "Yet you never developed universal combat protocols or honor restrictions common to all sentient species we've encountered." "Because survival supersedes formality," explained General Chen. "When existence is threatened, humanity adapts by any means necessary." What emerged from 3 days of intensive negotiation was unprecedented in Dominion history. A treaty that established Earth as a sovereign power and created a demilitarized zone around the Sol system. The Dominion would withdraw its forces completely, while Earth would suspend deployment of technologies that threatened hyperspace stability. As the representatives prepared to depart, Admiral Zextarian requested a private word with General Chen. The once proud military leader's posture showed the weight of being the first Dominion admiral to fail in a conquest mission. "Your species terrifies us," he admitted, mandibles clicking softly in what humans had learned was a gesture of profound respect. "You don't wage war according to any comprehensible doctrine. You simply identify what must be preserved and then eliminate any threat to it, without limitation or hesitation. General Chen considered his response carefully. That's because we spent thousands of years trying to destroy ourselves and failing. What makes you think anyone else would succeed where we couldn't? The statement was transmitted across all Dominion channels, reaching every ship and colony world. In the Supreme Council chamber, High Chancellor Ethrax ordered it preserved in the Eternal Archives, alongside a new directive added to the Dominion's founding laws. Earth was to be respected, studied from a distance, and above all, never threatened again. One standard year later, Dr. Reyes stood in the newly established Interstellar Relations Complex in Geneva, watching as the first official Dominion cultural exchange delegation arrived. The fear and suspicion that had defined first contact had evolved into cautious curiosity on both sides. "They still don't understand us," remarked Dr. Takahashi, observing the aliens' careful movements. Dr. Reyes smiled. "Understanding isn't necessary for respect. They learned the most important lesson. Some species fight to win, but humans fight to survive. The difference makes all the difference." Beyond Earth's atmosphere, the stars no longer represented isolation but possibility. Humanity had earned its place not through technological advancement, but through the very adaptability that had defined its troubled history. The Empire had indeed been left speechless, and humanity was ready to speak.